We are here with Matt Randolph, Mr. Global, coming to us from the truck this morning. Good morning, Matt. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you guys?
We are wonderful, Matt. I wanted to, before we get into oil and gas and all of those things, and if you have missed Mr. Global's previous appearances here on the show, go to our archives. And we've had some great conversations with you, Matt, over the last couple of months, and I highly encourage people to check it out. Also, I saw yesterday that you're putting a lot more of your content now on YouTube.
Yeah, I am. I've been doing that for a while. I just haven't been pushing it that much, but yeah, I am.
Because I saw you on Twitter yesterday, essentially saying, "Yeah, this app is really annoying, and I'm going to be posting less here." So, go to YouTube and search for Mr. Global, and then subscribe. You've got great content on there. So, if you want a steady diet of Mr. Global, that's where they can find you best. Right, Matt.
Yeah, X is like the new digital age National Enquirer, and I just thought I don't want to be a part of that. Like I don't want people to have to deal with that to see me. So, you know, uh, so I'm kind of pointing more towards YouTube and of course TikTok. So
Right,
yeah.
which is where I first found you. And you also have a new partnership that you recently announced, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Do you want to tell us about that?
So the folks at a media organization called The Dispatch reached out to me, and I did a lot of research on them. I've been approached many times, and they they have a they're very committed to fact-based reporting. So yeah, I'm doing a little bit of work with them. I'm partnering with them. I'm not sure where that will go, but I'm gonna get the opportunity to write some articles in their newsletters and probably appear on some podcasts and things like that. But we'll see how that works out. But it's kind of exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And again, the you have the knowledge, you have the facts, you have the experience to actually explain how things work. And I think the more people that can hear from experts like you, the better off we're all going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did get some pushback from that because they're a center right biased media organization, and my response to that is if they're telling the truth, I really don't care. To me, if you're always telling the truth, whatever anyone thinks your bias is doesn't matter. And we can't be picky when it comes to organizations just being honest and factual and having good fact checking in place. So yeah, that's how I came to that decision. So
Well, that's great. That's very exciting. Good for you. I'm excited for you.
thank you.
Let's talk about first of all sanctions. Of course, Donald Trump now will be coming in for a second term, and there has been talk of removing sanctions from Russia and potentially even Iran. I've seen some articles this morning talking about that potential as well. What would that mean, Matt, for the oil and gas industry?
uh, I don't believe for a second that sanctions will be removed from Iran. We've had sanctions on Iran since the Obama presidency. um, we just decide when to enforce them based on the price of gas in the United States. So, when gas is high, we don't enforce them. When gas is cheap, we enforce them. So, our sanctions on Iran are based on how Americans feel about gas prices, basically. I could see sanctions on Russia being lifted. I don't know that that will happen, but it's certainly a possibility. And how Russia responds to that, will affect gas prices. They may lift the sanctions, and if Iran keeps their production exactly where it is, and they just enjoy market prices because they're selling at a deep discount, then it won't really have an impact on gas prices beyond sort of the initial shock of the news story. That will cause a drop in oil prices quickly, but the fundamentals will always take over. And so it depends on what Russia does if that occurs. If they decide to increase production, then it could really drive down oil and gas prices. But we've seen nothing from OPEC Plus, which Russia is a part of, to suggest that they want to have anything to do with lowering oil prices. So I suspect if we lift those sanctions, they'll just keep production exactly where it is.
And so the prices are essentially going to stay the same.
In all likelihood, yes. You never know what's going to happen with the Trump administration and all the wheeling and dealing that goes on around the world. But I would say, in all likelihood, it's pretty much going to be business as usual. Yeah.
Matt, speaking of wheeling and dealing, one of the things that you really taught us when watching your videos and being on the show is that it's not about who's sitting in the office the day of low or high gas prices. It's about what's happened in the past. Is there anything that's happened in the past, like since the Trump deals of 2020, whether it be with Biden or anybody, that we should be on the lookout on the horizon for future gas prices to spike or to drop that were decided maybe 6 months, a year and a half ago?
No, nothing has happened, stateside. The one thing we have seen repeatedly throughout, over the last 4 years is OPEC's repeated. They're repeatedly saying that they are trying to maintain an $80 price floor on oil, and anytime the subject, comes up of them potentially increasing production, they'll come out and say they're going to increase production. And when it comes time to do it, if oil prices aren't where they want them to be, they just delay it. So they have worked really hard at maintaining higher oil prices for the entire last 4 years, and they've been very consistent in that. So, and that's because they're trying to finance their Vision 2030, is where they're trying to diversify their whole economy, and they have to pay for it through oil revenues. I don't see them shifting away from that without some forceful, maybe some threats or something from the current or the future administration. We know Donald Trump threatened to pull away our military defenses from Saudi to get them to lower oil prices last time. So that's why it's difficult for me to say this is going to happen or this is going to happen, because Trump is so unpredictable, and he will take big swings and try wild things. So, but we do know OPEC is committed to keeping prices up, and they've been committed for a long time.
Yeah, it's certainly not in their best interest to see the price go down.
Right. Yeah. And one thing that's different with OPEC is, their demographics have changed a lot in their countries, their populations. They can't afford to provide the world with cheap oil like they used to. Their society is largely dependent on their governments and their oil revenues, and they're running deficits right now with oil prices where they are. And unlike the United States, Saudi Arabia is not keen on having budget deficits. That's not something that they find acceptable at all. So the massive growth in population in that area and the massive increase in revenue that it takes to support their society has changed drastically. And that's why they're very hard line on keeping oil prices higher, because they depend on that for their economy.
Matt Randolph is our guest. He's known as Mr. Global. He is an oil and gas industry expert, been in the field for 30 years, has his own oil company, and we're talking again about oil and gas prices and what we can look forward to under a second Trump administration. Matt, Ukraine is still a big player in this, and Donald Trump has said repeatedly that he's going to let Vladimir Putin essentially do what he wants with Ukraine. If Ukraine falls to Putin, what is that going to mean globally?
If Ukraine falls to Putin, then the United States is no longer the only superpower in the world. The reason that Russia is going into Ukraine is because they have enormous amounts of natural resources, natural gas that they have not yet tapped into. If you can imagine, I did a piece a while back about the fact that Russia being a part of OPEC is a threat to the United States. And if they, somehow get their hands on Ukraine and all of those natural resources, that will really undermine the United States' strength in providing LNG and energy to our European allies. But I don't think Donald Trump is going to have some problems there, because, he called Zelensky and he called Putin both, and the next day Ukraine launched their largest attack ever on Moscow. So I don't think he's making any headwinds there.
It seems like he's trying to be friends with both of them and making it seem like he's going to tell Putin what to do. You need to do this. Stop doing this. I've got
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. Meanwhile, Putin's like, hey, keep talking, buddy.
Yeah. And what we've seen historically is Republicans, really against the aid to Ukraine. And even Mike Johnson, the speaker, they go in and basically they look at our intelligence and stuff, and the people that really matter tell them, hey, this is what's going on, and then they change their tune and they go ahead and give the aid to Ukraine because they understand how important it is. So a lot of times, what you see in the media on TV with these politicians, what they say, that doesn't match what's going on inside those buildings. They understand the importance of Ukraine keeping its independence, regardless of what they say on TV. And I have a feeling a lot of those Republicans are going to be swaying Donald Trump to continue the aid to Ukraine. I know he has said that that's going to stop, but I'm taking I'll see it when I believe it, or believe it when I see it approach. Because even Mike Johnson and the most hardcore right Republicans have agreed to continue giving aid to Ukraine. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though, because Donald Trump announced over the weekend that he will not be inviting Mike Pompeo or Nikki Haley back into his administration. And both of them are supporters of Ukraine and continuing aid to Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he's going to wash his hands of pretty much anybody that worked with him in the past. It seems that way to me.
He's going to wash his hands with anyone who dare disagree with him.
Yeah.
Whereas like Stephen Miller, it cannot wait to get back there. I mean, it's going to be a true cabinet of yes men.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm going to take a little comfort from the idea that there are Republicans around him who realize how critical Ukraine's continued independence is and what that means for us.
Yeah, it really is. I cannot overstate how important it is that Ukraine remain there, keep their independence. And, a lot of people have this notion of, we need to take care of, the United States before we take care of them, completely overlooking the fact that assisting Ukraine is taking care of the United States in a much larger way than our government could actually take care of us here. It's much bigger than just us. This is world stuff, right? So, but you got to look beyond the politics.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just what has happened to the Russian military because of Ukraine fighting back. I mean, the amount of resources it would have taken us as a country to get that done, I can't even imagine.
Right. And one of the best things from this whole conflict, if you can find anything at all good in it, is that Russia has shown the world that they are not near the military strength that they have been claiming they have been for the last 30 years. So I think that's a big positive, because now the world looks at Russia and they're like, you know what I mean? Like,
Putin,
not so scary. Yeah, you're not so scary anymore. We're going to continue our conversation with Matt Randolph, Mr. Global. We'll talk about renewables. The words are hard. When we return, you're listening to Matenaer on Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network. Good morning. Welcome to Matenaer on Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and Dr. Slide on the board, coming to you from our studio at Radio Park in Racine, Wisconsin. You can always join us. You can call. You can text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Matt Randolph is here, Mr. Global. You can follow him on YouTube. I highly suggest you subscribe. He is a 30-year oil and gas industry expert, been working in the field for all that time. He has enough facts and information and expertise to annoy everyone, which is one of the reasons why we like to have him on the show. Matt, you're in the oil and gas industry, but you are not completely against renewables. Is that accurate?
Oh, I'm not against renewables at all in any way. We need all forms of energy. One thing I tell people all the time, even if climate change wasn't a thing, we would still need all these renewables to meet our future energy demand. Our energy demand is about to exceed basically the limits of which we can produce fossil fuels. So we need renewable energy regardless of what's going on with the planet. That's just a fact.
And at least in some of your videos that I've watched, it seems like you're more for solar than wind.
Yeah, solar has a lot more upside. Solar has a lot more growth potential in the future. Um, uh, it's going to, solar is going to dominate wind, uh, and I believe that nuclear is going to grow a lot in the future as well. But solar is really where it's at in the future. You can put solar anywhere. You can put it on top of parking lots and buildings and homes, and like you can just put it anywhere. You can't put a wind farm anywhere.
Right.
And you know, the efficiency of solar panels is going to increase dramatically, where it takes far fewer panels to generate the same amount of power. So solar is going to be a huge deal in our future, no matter what. And it is definitely going to be the premier renewable energy source in the future, without a doubt.
Whenever I hear people talk about solar, I cannot get out of my head that hearing that Congressman Dan Crenshaw said, he just said so flippantly, well, when there's no sun, nothing's working. It doesn't work anyways. Like, he just said it like it was an expert. I'm like, but
they're called batteries, aren't they?
Not how it works, sir. But that's fine. Andrew on our live stream asked a question, and we hadn't heard about this, and I'm not sure if you had either. He asks, has Biden indicated that he's going to sign a 4-year deal to decrease production by 5%? Have you heard anything about that?
No, that's not a thing.
Okay. Yeah. You heard it here first.
You heard it here, Andrew. That Matt says that's not a thing.
I don't know who he would sign that deal with. OPEC won't speak to him, and he can't do that in the United States because these are private companies. So that's not a thing.
And what about lowering Donald Trump said he's going to, it's all drill, baby, drill. And then we're going to cut energy costs by 50%. That's not a thing either, is it?
No, absolutely not. That's not a thing. You know, if we cut energy costs by 50%, then the gasoline will be cheaper than it was during COVID. You know, you would need oil at like $20 a barrel. That's not going to happen in any universe unless we have another pandemic. But no, that's certainly not a thing. That's not even a possibility.
Right. And as you've said too, oil companies aren't going to work to decrease their own profits.
Right.
Which is essentially what that would do.
Well, not only, I mean, that wouldn't only decrease their profits, that would put them in huge losses, like massive losses. That's not, we're not even, profits aren't even in the universe when we're talking prices in that range. So, you know, getting into some sort of crazy oil price war with OPEC could potentially make that happen temporarily. I don't see that happening, but if it does, it's going to be pretty bad for the United States, because regardless of how much oil we can produce, we cannot compete with them in a price war. We just can't, because we do it for profit. Their governments, you know, run their oil companies and their oil fields. That's just, we can't compete there.
Well, it sounds like what might happen then is we might see another was it in the deal of 2020 where he sits down with these groups and tries to hammer out something that will allow him to come to the people and say, look what I have done. And then in 2 to 3 years, it's going to affect us. I was going to use a different term, but the FCC said I cannot, but it will affect us. So because he wants to be the ever-loving deal maker, he's going to go to these, because you just said OPEC won't talk to Biden. I'm sure they'll talk to Trump because they're like, of course, come talk to us. We'll make a deal. It'll be beautiful. Yeah.
I shiver to even think about any kind of deal he would make with OPEC based on the results of the last one. That's frightening to think about. But he doesn't have any leverage. He's in a different oil market than he was then. Everything is different. You know, nothing just stays the same all the time.
Right.
And if he goes over there and they're going to say no, he has absolutely no leverage against them whatsoever. And it's just not going to work for him. So there's going to have to be some trickery involved for him to pull something off like he did in 2018.
Matt Randolph is Mr. Global. Follow him on YouTube. Subscribe to his channel. Thank you so very much, Matt. We got about 30 seconds. How are the chickens? Do you still have 3 chickens?
No, I got 6.
6 chickens. We'll have to have you back on just for an update on the chickens.
Yeah,
Matt
they got
Randolph.
wet.
Thank you so much, Matt. We'll be in touch.